On August 20th, 1989, in a lavish Beverly Hills mansion, multiple gunshots shattered the calm of a quiet Sunday evening.
Beverly Hills emergency?
Yes, police.
What's the problem?
Someone killed my parents.
Pardon me?
Someone killed my parents.
What? Who?
No.
Were they shot?
Hey, man,
Lyle Menendez, just 21, is on the line, his voice trembling with fear. In the background, his 18-year-old brother Erik can be heard screaming. Their parents had been brutally murdered.
What happened? Who shot who? You came home and found two shots.
What happened that night? It is very well known. Over 30 years, I've processed so much of it and still have my heart beating talking about it. Still have nightmares.
Approximately 11:47 p.m., we received a 911 emergency call of possible shooting victims at this location. Our officers responded and did in fact determine that there had been a shooting.
As police rush to the $4 million mansion, they find Erik and Lyle Menendez in a state of absolute shock, but nothing could prepare them for the horrific scene awaiting inside. In the den, officers discover the brutalized bodies of 45-year-old Jose Menendez and his 47-year-old wife, Kitty. The couple had been slaughtered in what appeared to be a brutal attack.
From my brother Brian, and he told me Kitty and Jose had been shot. I put the phone down and I started running around the house screaming. I couldn't bear it, and it's still difficult thinking about it.
Jose was sitting on a couch. He had an obvious gunshot wound to the back of his head. He had gunshot wounds to both of his arms. Kitty, on the other hand, she had extensive gunshot wounds to her upper body and her head, chest, arms, everywhere you can imagine. It would not have taken that many shots to kill somebody. So it was overkill, way overkill.
No one could have imagined such a fate for Jose Menendez, a self-made multimillionaire, and his beautiful wife, Kitty. Their violent end stood in stark contrast to the life of luxury they had built. The murder weapon, a Mossberg 12-gauge shotgun. Its devastating power left a gruesome scene. Brain matter and blood dripped from the ceiling, while the bodies bore wounds so severe they were barely recognizable. As investigators surveyed the carnage, a peculiar detail caught their attention. Despite the number of shots fired, not a single shell casing could be found. Someone had meticulously collected every casing from the crime scene.
I've been in this business for over 33 years, and I've heard of very few murders that were more savage than this one was.
There were shells, gun shells, in my car. My car was inside the search area. All they had to do is search my car. They were searching everything. And if they would have just pressed me, I wouldn't have been able to withstand any questioning. I was in a completely broken and shattered state of mind. I was shell-shocked.
As investigators grappled with the brutal end of Jose and Kitty Menendez, few could have imagined the journey that brought them to that fateful night in Beverly Hills. Their story began 34 years earlier in 1962 at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. Jose Menendez, an 18-year-old Cuban immigrant with dreams as big as his talent, arrived on a swimming scholarship. It was there he met 20-year-old Mary Louise Anderson, known to her friends as Kitty.
He thought he hit the jackpot because not only did they share a passion of athletics, but she was also a former beauty queen. So she was so incredibly gorgeous, and they really hit it off and fell in love very quickly.
In 1963, just a year after their first meeting, the couple tied the knot and set their sights on the future. New York City became their first home as newlyweds. There, Jose pursued an accounting degree at Queens College, laying the foundation for his future business success. In 1968, the young couple welcomed their first son, Joseph Lyle. Though given his father's name, the boy would later choose to go by his middle name, Lyle. With the arrival of their firstborn, Kitty left her teaching job to focus on family. Seeking more space for their growing family, the Menendezes relocated to New Jersey. It was there in 1970 that their second son, Erik, was born.
He loved having the idea of having sons, to carry on the Menendez name, and being able to continue that legacy was really important to him.
In Hopewell Township, New Jersey, Lyle and Erik attended the prestigious Princeton Day School. Their lives seemed charmed, but Jose's ambition would soon take them even further. In 1986, Jose's rising career as a corporate executive led the family to Beverly Hills, California. He had joined International Video Entertainment, a move that would cement the family's place among Hollywood's elite.
They're now living in Beverly Hills, the famous zip code 90210. It's perfect for the boys, these good-looking, young, star athletes. It's great for Jose and Kitty. It really shows how successful they are.
In their new home, Lyle and Erik lived a life of luxury, afforded every financial advantage. Their father's obsession with success extended to his son's pursuits, particularly in tennis. Under elite coaching and Jose's relentless pressure, Erik became a nationally ranked player in his age bracket, while Lyle was groomed to follow his father's footsteps in business.
Jose was very controlling of those boys' lives. From the friends that they had, to when they did their homework, to where they went to school, to what they did in their free time, he really controlled every single aspect.
Jose Menendez was known as a hard-driving father, pushing his sons to excel in athletics and every other aspect of life.
Their success was his success, and that there was a lot of pressure put on them. You need to be as good as this image of your father, this immigrant who came and made all of this of himself on his own, working hard, and you need to embody that.
His drive had paid off financially. At the time of his death, Jose was worth approximately $14 million, but the aftermath of the killings took a surprising turn. In the months following their parents' deaths, Lyle and Erik began spending lavishly. Luxury items, businesses, and extensive travel became their new norm, raising eyebrows among those who knew the family.
Erik dropped plans to enter UCLA and hired a $50,000 a year tennis coach to help him turn pro.
They started spending the money as if it was water, as if they'd been desperate for that kind of money.
Lyle bought a Porsche, expensive clothes, and a restaurant near the family's former home in Princeton, New Jersey.
The brothers' lavish spending in the wake of their parents' deaths didn't go unnoticed. As Lyle and Erik splurged on luxury items and trips, investigators began to wonder, could money be the motive?
You grow up in Beverly Hills, you see a lot of extreme wealth, and kids at 16 driving $50,000 cars out the gate. It's not that unusual.
I think everybody copes with trauma differently. The amount of money might feel extreme, again, to people who don't have that kind of money. But if we make it all relative, we see it all the time.
Police were well aware of a crucial statistic. When a homicide occurs inside a home, 98% of the time, the perpetrator is someone known to the victims, often a relative. Despite the brothers' claims that their parents' deaths were a mafia hit, suspicion began to focus on Lyle and Erik.
Oh, come on, they're so adorable. They are too fine to go to prison. Whoa! I know they don't exactly have an airtight case, okay? Lyle went on a little bit of a spending spree a week after the murders. He got a couple Rolexes and a $70,000 Porsche, but you know what? Sometimes you just have to treat yourself.
Erik Menendez, who had been set to attend UCLA that fall, suddenly put his college plans on hold. Instead, he threw himself into tennis.
Erik's goal was to become a top world-class tennis player, and he wanted to play the professional tennis circuit. He hired a full-time coach, which he never had before, and would be working 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, something that would help him take his mind off of the dark past.
While Erik focused on tennis, Lyle took a different path. He lived in a condo nearby with his girlfriend and gave up on his tennis dreams. Instead, he wanted to go into business. Lyle invested $300,000 in Chuck's Spring Street Cafe, a chicken wing restaurant in Princeton that he used to visit as a student. Their spending spree caught the attention of Craig Signorelli, an old friend of Erik's, who started to wonder why the brothers were spending so much instead of grieving their parents.
Growing up, Erik didn't have a really large circle of friends. His friends that he did have, though, were really just the ones that he had on his tennis team, and he really connected with Craig Signorelli.
In November 1989, 3 months after the murders, Craig Signorelli contacted the police with shocking news. He claimed that Erik had made a startling confession to him.
Erik told Craig that he himself had murdered his parents along with his brother Lyle. And when Craig heard this, he really didn't know what to do with this information because Erik is his friend.
But Signorelli's revelations didn't stop there. He recalled that in July 1988, he and Erik were at a friend's house in Calabasas when they found the code to the family's safe. They used it to steal valuables, and Erik later told Lyle about the burglary. A week later, the brothers broke into another home nearby.
In total, they stole about $100,000 worth of valuables.
They took big things, TVs, stereos, jewelry, all sorts of stuff, to the extent that they actually rented a rental storage area to put some of the stuff in.
The burglaries continued until the brothers got careless and were eventually caught. Their father, Jose, quickly stepped in. He went to every house they robbed, returning as many stolen items as he could. For anything he couldn't return, he wrote checks on the spot to cover the losses.
Erik was going to undergo psychological counseling. Now, Kitty was searching around for a psychological counselor, and that is where Dr. Rosselló comes into the picture.
On March 6, 1990, 7 months after the murders of Jose and Kitty Menendez, a key witness came forward. Judalon Smith, the 37-year-old ex-girlfriend of Dr. L. Jerome Rosselló, met with detectives. What she revealed would break the case wide open.
Judalon knew so much about the murders that she either had to be there or she did it, because she knew everything.
Smith recalled an odd conversation from months earlier with her Beverly Hills psychologist, Dr. Jerome Rosselló, while she sat in his waiting room. This was the same psychologist that Erik Menendez had been court-ordered to see.
Dr. Rosselló was married, had a couple kids, and he had a mistress. Her name was Judalon Smith. Well, Judalon Smith was a patient of his, which is, by the way, is unethical. Dr. Rosselló told Judalon, I'm seeing Erik Menendez, and he's getting really upset about the murders, and I think he's going to admit to killing his parents.
During his session, Erik told Dr. Rosselló about the nightmares he was having about his parents' death. Then, with Judalon's nearby and within earshot, he allegedly made a full confession. Erik described exactly how the murders happened, what they did with the guns, the bloody clothes, and all the details. Meanwhile, Erik called Lyle, and when Lyle arrived, he learned that Erik had confessed everything to Dr. Rosselló.
Lyle goes, we're going to have to kill him, points to the doctor, we're going to have to kill anybody else that knows him because of what you said. And Judalon's hearing all this, and she's in the other room.
I went to Dr. Rosselló because I really wanted to kill myself. I told him that I was responsible. His response was to have Lyle come in.
Rosselló tells Lyle, I am a doctor, and what you tell me is confidential. And because it's confidential, I can't disclose that to anybody. So that was enough to calm things down, and then Erik and Lyle left that night. Rosselló was so afraid that he went home, moved his family out of his house into a local hotel. He was so afraid that something was going to happen to them.
Over multiple sessions, Dr. Rosselló began secretly recording Erik and Lyle's conversations as evidence. A few days later, police obtained a search warrant for Dr. Rosselló's recordings.
He wanted one tape in which at some point on tape he told us, you guys say you killed your parents. It wasn't like he was like, oh, this is terrible, let me help you guys, and that we work through this in a confidential way. That's what a normal therapist would do. Dr. Rosselló is right into blackmail.
With this crucial evidence in hand, it was time to arrest the Menendez brothers.
Today at approximately 1:20 p.m., Beverly Hills police detectives arrested Joseph Lyle Menendez, 22, for the August murders of his mother and father, Maria Louise Kitty Menendez, and Jose Enrique Menendez.
They could have just called me and told me to come into the police station. It was a staged arrest for a media circus. They had called the media to be ready. They arrested me and SWAT team, cornering the car on the road like I was a fugitive drug dealer or something.
Police say the motive was apparently money, a $14 million inheritance to be shared by the brothers.
Lyle Menendez was arrested by the Beverly Hills police outside the mansion where his parents were killed. Erik Menendez surrendered at Los Angeles International Airport when he returned from Israel, where he had been playing tennis.
From that moment when I got off the plane and the detectives put handcuffs on me, everything changed. It was an ending of my life at that point. I was a teenager, and I had no idea of what was going to come.
This case explodes. The media is all over it, the public, everyone. You can't get away from this case. Erik and Lyle's face is everywhere.
Once the brothers were in custody, the key question was whether Dr. Oziel's tapes would be admissible in court. Would doctor-patient privilege protect them? If the tapes could be used, they had a strong case, but without them, their case was weak. So detectives decided to try a different approach. They searched state records for shotgun sales made just days before the murders. Their investigation led them to San Diego, where a breakthrough awaited. There, they uncovered evidence that would shatter the brothers' carefully constructed alibi. In a local gun shop, detectives discovered that the murder weapons had been purchased using a stolen ID card, one belonging to Lyle Menendez's roommate.
And ABC News has learned that two 12-gauge shotguns were purchased at this sporting goods store in San Diego on August 18th, 2 days before the murder.
It was later confirmed that the person to whom the ID card belonged was in New York at the time, meaning there was no way he could have purchased the guns. He also confirmed that the signature on the purchase receipt was forged.
That's not what my signature looks like at all. He wrote a signature for authorities. And so because of that, police went to Erik and said, let's see your signature. Let's see if it matches up. However, Erik refused.
It became clear that the brothers had killed their parents, and soon the trial began.
Attorney Leslie Abramson is representing Erik Menendez.
Why aren't you nervous today? I think it's because I know this case so well. I've lived this case. I've lived their lives. So there's nothing to be nervous about. I know it.
We wondered what drives this tiny, brash, brainy woman with the in-your-face style.
This 4'11" Little Orphan Annie lookalike is 104 pounds of pure dynamite. Her trademark audacity has helped her save a dozen people from death row. She's one of the foremost criminal defense lawyers in the nation.
I was coming into the courthouse and people were filming me, and I just thought, what the hell have I gotten myself into? And I went in the bathroom and threw up. The only time I've ever thrown up during a trial or before a trial or anything. Having the media there was a nightmare. You don't have to do that in a normal murder trial.
Then, the defense presented its statements.
The only thing that you are going to have to focus on in this trial is why it happened. This trial will take you behind the facade of the rich houses, the fancy cars, the wealthy friends, and impressive social engagements. If you didn't swim well enough, you were held underwater. When Jose took off his belt, someone was going to get beaten. You didn't know who, and they knew that these were parents who could kill their children.
One time, Jose put Lyle on a kitchen counter and prompted Lyle to jump off, and he was going to catch him. As Lyle did so, Jose backed off and let him fall to the ground, telling him that you can never trust anybody.
Multiple trials ensued, capturing the nation's attention and dominating headlines. But the story was far from over. In a stunning turn of events, Lyle and Erik Menendez finally broke their silence. What they revealed would send shockwaves through the courtroom and beyond.
Did your father have sexual contact with you?
Yes.
And how did it start?
We would have these talks, and he would show me, and he would fondle me, and he would ask me to do the same with him, and I would touch him, and we would undress. He would put me on my knees, and he would guide me, all my movements, and I would have oral sex with him.
Most of us wept at times. It was very, very hard. I looked over and the legal transcriber was weeping. She was typing, but she was weeping. It was tragic. It was just tragic.
At some point, did he do some other things to you?
Yes. He raped me.
Did you cry?
Yes.
Did you bleed?
Yes.
Were you scared?
Very.
Did you tell your mom?
I told her that he keeps touching me.
What did your mom say?
She told me to stop it and that I was exaggerating and that my dad has to punish me when I do things wrong. And she told me that he loved me.
After 19 days of deliberations, Erik's jury informed the judge that they couldn't agree on a verdict due to a lack of evidence.
The court finds that the jury is hopelessly deadlocked and declares a mistrial.
2 weeks later, Lyle's jury also reported that they were deadlocked.
And when the jury was polled afterwards, the women voted one way and the men voted another because the women believed them and the men didn't. And I think they could not come together and agree on it.
The first trial ended in a hung jury, with 6 votes for manslaughter and 6 for murder. Meanwhile, after the state decided to retry the Menendez brothers, O.J. Simpson was tried and later acquitted.
The DA's office in L.A. took it on the chin for not having convicted O.J. Simpson.
There's heightened pressure on the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office to reverse a humiliating decade-long run of high-profile defeats.
This meant that the same outcome wouldn't happen again in the second Menendez brothers trial.
One thing that we have asked the judge to do is to limit the so-called abuse excuse, to limit evidence that has nothing to do with this case.
And so all the rulings from the first trial changed in the state's favor. There were various instructional issues. There was expert testimony that wasn't permitted in the second trial. The sexual abuse evidence that had been admitted at the first trial for the defense was no longer admissible.
The second jury came back with a verdict, convicting the Menendez brothers of first-degree murder and sentencing them to life in prison without parole.
Tom, we've just heard only seconds ago that the verdict is life without parole for both Menendez brothers.
I remember when the verdict came down, it was first degree. And first degree meant spending the rest of my life in prison for the next 50, 60 years. It was so daunting that I was in shock.
The Menendez brothers' story didn't end with their trials. 30 years later, new facts came to light. John Peduto, who used to work as Jose Menendez's personal assistant at Hertz Rent-A-Car and RCA Records, spoke up. Peduto, who has since passed away, said Jose was really interested in a boy band called Menudo.
Guess what they had him up for? The manager of Menudo.
I'm not sure.
They had him up for abusing one of the boys.
That he was up for abusing one of the members of Menudo.
Yes, sexually, by the way.
Oh.
The creator of Menudo was Edgardo Diaz, a prominent figure in the Latin music industry. However, Diaz's legacy has been marred by serious allegations. Multiple former members of Menudo, as well as boys who auditioned for the band, have accused Diaz of sexual abuse and exploitation. These disturbing allegations cast a dark shadow over Menudo's history and success. Even more shocking was the emergence of a connection between Jose Menendez and Menudo.
Edgardo Diaz was constantly holding auditions with the band. To audition for Menudo, you would go and spend the weekend at the Menudo Mansion in San Juan, and your parents would drop you off on Thursday night and pick you up the following Monday. I suspected that there was a connection between Jose Menendez and Menudo.
While many associated with Menudo remained silent about the allegations against Edgardo Diaz, one former member, Roy Rosselló, courageously shared his heartbreaking story. Rosselló revealed that his abuse began on the very day he joined Menudo. He recounted how Diaz took him to an apartment, led him into a room, and started abusing him.
Él me dijo, ¿te gustaría ser famoso? Yo sí, claro que quiero. Claro que quiero. Pues entonces tú tienes que hacer lo que yo diga. Tú tienes que someterte a cosas que quién sabe tú no quieras hacer. Y esa noche, él intentó de penetrarme. Y me violó esa noche.
Roy Rosselló's traumatic experiences with Edgardo Diaz didn't end with that first incident. He revealed that the abuse continued throughout his time with Menudo, painting a picture of ongoing exploitation behind the band's public success. But Rosselló's revelations didn't stop there. In a shocking twist, he shared a disturbing detail that directly implicated Jose Menendez.
It wasn't until about 8 months down the line that I brought up the subject of RCA records that Roy first mentioned, "Oh, I know that guy." I said, "What guy?" "You know, that guy who was murdered, Jose Menendez, a victim of sexual abuse, doesn't bring up this other accused pedophile out of the blue." And I realized right then and there that something had to have happened.
Ella se quedó completamente paralizada. Yo le dije, yo fui violado por el presidente de RCA, José Menéndez. Cuando Edgardo Díaz estaba prestes a firmar el contrato millonario de recibir millones por el contrato de la RCA, José Menéndez era un monstruo.
When Roy was 13, Edgardo took him to the Menendez house, where another abuse was about to happen, this time by Jose Menendez.
Este vino es un vino carísimo y tómate toda la taza. Después que yo me la tomé, yo me comencé a sentir un cansancio, un peso. Yo no podía más moverme. A partir de ese momento, yo solamente veía cosas como que desenfocadas. Pues me drogaron. Y después de eso, yo amanecí en el hotel. ¿Cómo yo llegué al hotel? Yo no sé. Pero cuando yo fui al baño, I was bleeding.
With new evidence supporting the Menendez brothers, a new generation is using social media to push for their release, believing they were wrongly convicted. Some supporters, as young as 12, argue that the brothers acted out of fear and are advocating for clemency by writing to California law officials.
I began to receive a lot of letters from other victims, and I began to connect with their own experiences because they were similar to mine. They were a lot of people, professional people. I mean, I was getting letters from police officers, citizens, educated people, international, who had gone through this.
People think that these two brothers should be out of prison by now. The reason why they decided to take their parents' lives that day is because they feared for their own lives.
They didn't kill their parents for money. They were in fear of their lives.
They just wanted the abuse to stop.
And the fact that there's a completely new generation that wasn't even born at the time in the first trial that now support the brothers is remarkable.